is the hope of your inheritance. Go read it. He says, I'm praying that your eyes of your understanding will be enlightened. Do what? To understand what you've inherited. You will get insight of what it means to have been co-included in this moment in history, where everything that now belongs to Christ now belongs to me. That I share in this triumph. I share in this victory. I share in this incredible, the triumph of the ages. I think the last time I was here I spoke about being included in terms of if your team wins. When your team wins, you ask somebody who won. You say, we won. What do you mean we won? You did nothing. You did nothing. You just sat there, you watched the game, you sorted out the refs, you changed the rules, you did everything. But you did nothing. You say, hey, when they win, I win. Their victory is my victory. You see, that's the power of association, of inclusion, of identification. There, victory is my victory. That's why we're talking about a victory that is yours. His triumph is your triumph. His victory is your victory. That is why we approach life not from a position of lack that we still need to negotiate. We approach it from a position of fullness. We approach it from a position of completeness. The finished work, the reference of our lives. Now I look at something and I speak to it from a position. Yes. Another position. I'm a son. I'm a son. Sure. And I engage life from another perspective. And because I have that perspective, it changes the way I think about stuff. The way I think about how to live life and what's important, what's not important. My priorities have totally changed because I'm looking from a position of authority. I don't engage it from a position of lack and slave mentality. I transition in my mind. That's what we are speaking of here. Here's a young man, he transitioned. But then we know what he did. He went and he messed it all up. And Jesus tells the story, and he tells it with graphic detail. I mean, Jesus could really work up some emotions. Because when he tells this story, he's speaking to Jews. And he's talking about this young man. I mean, it was terrible. This young man took his inheritance, left the father. It was as if this young man made a statement, my father has died. And he left. And he messed it all up, and he landed with the pigs. Now, listen, I don't know if you know, but Jews and pigs. There is a distance now, all right? There is a distance between Jews and pigs. There. And so Jesus he's telling the story. He's saying this guy could not go lower. He's scraping the bottom of the barrel. And while he's sitting with the pigs, he desires what the pigs have. And then the Bible says, and he came to himself. And what does he say? Verse 18, I will arise, and I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your hired servants. See, the second thing that affects people is guilt and condemnation. It's the mechanism the devil wants to use to to rob people from their understanding of sonship. Remember the last time, I don't know how many of you remember that, but we spoke about being in the guilt cycle.
Yes. Yeah.
The guilt cycle is where we start with, this conviction. We must try and live a better life, and then we make a mistake, and then we come to condemnation, and then I go to rededication again, and I'm in this cycle. And I grew up in that cycle. Oh, I knew all about that cycle. I knew how to live in condemnation. Oh, I've done something wrong in condemnation. But what does Paul write? Paul says you've got to understand something. There's a grace cycle.
Yeah.
The grace cycle says, run to what you know.
Yeah.
Will we stay in sin so that grace can abound? Do you not know? Paul says there's something you must know. The moment you sin, run to what you know. What do you know? You have died. You have been crucified with Christ. You died to your old life. That is no longer you. So what does that do? That makes that I don't go to condemnation. I run to what I know. I run to what I know about myself. What I just done, Lord, that's not who I am. I don't want to live there. I run to what I know. So that what can happen? So that I can now reckon, Lord Jitsumai, come to the logical conclusion, to the only logical conclusion of who I truly am and what my identity is, so that I can present, so that I can live a different way of living. I'm in another cycle now. When I do things that are wrong, I run to what I know. Run to what I know. Listen to this. This guy wanted to run to guilt. He thought that his father would now have pity on him because he's coming in this guilt mode.
Sure.
I will go to my father and I will say I have sinned.
Yeah.
And the father knew that he sinned. You don't have to tell him. He doesn't need information. So what happens? Here he comes and he stands before the father. And he recites. He's been reciting this thing all the way to the father. Father, I have sinned. I'm no longer worthy to be called as... What does the father do? He doesn't answer him. He turns to the servants and said, go and fetch the robe. Go get the cloak. Go and get this mantle. My son has forgotten who he is.
Hey.
Come and clothe him. Come and clothe him. He's now considering another identity. There's only one identity he has. Remind him of his identity. No matter what he's done, where he's come from.
Wow.
Bring him here. That he can once again discover his true identity.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Glory.